Not red, not blue, not white, not green, just gray. Just gray.
I'm Gray Thompson. You are listening to The Gray Zone, a name I still can't stand, but it's starting to grow on me a little bit. We're going to talk some more college football today. Got my good buddy Davey McKnight here. Irish Davey.
Hey, Gray. Thanks for having me back. Yeah.
Is it okay if I call you that?
Irish Davey?
Yeah.
You can.
I can?
Yeah.
I'm saying it to the masses, though.
Well, you know what? Sure. I created a little local guy here with Irish Davey, so yeah.
You got your Cubby shirt on.
I got my Cubby shirt on. We
Representing
stink.
the state.
We stink. Well, yeah. Area.
Still. I was testing you.
Making sure I was real, yes.
You didn't go to Notre Dame, did you?
No, I did not. I went to Clemson.
Yeah, I knew that. Go Tigers, right?
Go Tigers. Gonna make probably a pretty good year.
Okay.
But no, I did not go to Notre Dame. Just lived there.
Can we start with that? How excited are you for Notre Dame this year? Actually, you know what? Let's go even back further. So when you lived there in South Bend, Indiana, you grew up there, right, as a kid?
Yeah, as I did. Yeah, Lou Holtz was there. Yeah. Good time to be a Notre Dame fan, by the way.
You know, to me, the holidays, I grew up in Cincinnati mostly. I was born here in Greenville, but our holidays were spent with family, who I loved. We had great family. We still have great family. My point is we would always spend, like, Thanksgiving in particular and Christmas with them in places like Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and Greenville, South Carolina, and Atlanta, like great sports cities, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I loved Tuscaloosa as a kid. I grew up there a lot in spite of just going there for vacations. Did you get, like, total love for Notre Dame from being up there?
Yeah, I mean, that's all the town revolves around that. It's the same way probably like Green Bay with the Packers. I'm sure Tuscaloosa with Alabama. It's different because the city of South Bend and Notre Dame have not always had the greatest relationship. It's a private school. It's a private Catholic school, so it's not like a college town in that sense. But, Notre Dame is religion there. Everyone there is either Irish or Polish. And Catholic churches, you throw a rock, you can hit 2 or 3 Catholic churches. All those.
So beer drinkers.
Yes, all big. Guinness is a huge deal up there.
I should have known. I've only been to South Bend once, and it wasn't a game weekend or anything like that, so I couldn't tell.
No, I mean, so if you go up to South Bend now, I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's a Rust Belt town. It was big in the automotive. You had Studebaker, you had Bendix. Huge car part and car manufacturer. They're gone.
Studebaker.
I
didn't know you had that.
And so you get up there, you get tied to the city of Chicago, not Indianapolis, because South Bend, like Indiana, is kind of a southern state, except for the north, which is like a northern state. So Indiana is kind of that weird thing. So people like Indianapolis, for example.
Sure, which I love. I grew up with Indianapolis.
There's a kind of a country Midwestern feel to it. Southern Indiana is definitely a lot more like the South than the North. I'm no judgment or statement on that. I'm just stating, yes.
I never noticed.
And then the North is kind of that blue collar, Cleveland, Chicago, Detroit feel to it. Gary is up there, which smells like a skunk from all the pollution and factories there, but everything's gone now. So I was there when I grew up there after that stuff moved. So Notre Dame was, kind of what the city latched onto.
You also grew up there after Notre Dame was pounding everybody in the late 80s, right?
Right. So, I mean, I was born in 87. Mm-hmm. I lived there till the mid to late 90s. And
did they win in 88? I'm testing myself here.
Yes, they won it. That's the last title.
I love coming up with that stuff.
Yes.
I'm not good with history.
Tony Rice from Woodruff, just on the road from here. So was the quarterback there. So I grew up.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he was the quarterback when they won.
I knew the name. I never would have thought.
So I became a huge Notre Dame fan when Jerome Bettis was there. I was very, very young at the time.
I'm sure he turned a few people around.
Right. He had a lot, and he was the fullback on the team, which was, of course, they ran more of a triple option. So anyway, it was dominant, and then we had a slew of terrible coaching for, I don't know, almost a decade.
Almost a decade?
Yeah. See, Weiss was 5 or 6. Too many, whatever it was. Willingham was only 3, and then Bob Davey was 5. So yeah, like 13 years. And then the worst coach team, Notre Dame team I've ever saw was the Brian Kelly team 4 years ago or 3 years ago. 4 years ago, that changed everything, and he's done a terrific job. So that's my Notre Dame backstory. Now to bring us to the present, I think this is the best team Notre Dame. So the last two, like last year and this year, I think this might be the best team this year we've had since the Lou Holtz era.
Is that right?
But we have a couple flaws and plus our schedule doesn't line up well for us to make a serious playoff push.
I'm with you. I've never understood the arguments that Notre Dame has an easy schedule.
Well, yeah, exactly.
And
they
I mean
travel
that in
all
no
over the
uncertain
country.
terms.
I would not say it's the hardest, but it's not easy, and
it's never easy. There's
right.
no such thing as an easy schedule, but
Right.
the way that Notre Dame has these lineups, like to always have SoCal and Stanford and on Navy. Oh, good grief.
Right. Yeah, that's the always.
forget
They don't
about
play
Navy.
They've never played an FCS team ever. And they never have, and they never will. That's another thing too. Like when you think about it, if Navy is one of our easiest games, think of like
Is it?
That's what people would say.
I got you.
I don't.
Well, they are
believe
right
it.
now, maybe.
Right now they are. This is actually they're bad, but for about a 10-year period, they were making a bowl game, and you just don't want to play it. I mean, South Carolina had
They play tough football.
Yeah, they
I
play
would compare
tough.
them like to Boston College or something.
right.
Like
And
Bruisers.
the thing is too, they actually Navy players would say now until Navy players said because Navy beat Army like 14 years in a row until the last couple of years. I forget what
Which
the
has
actual
been
numbers.
fun.
Which has been fun. It's good to finally see that happen. So there was a period where and Notre Dame beat Navy 44 times in a row. I was actually at the game that Navy.
44?
Yes, the last time they beat him was till Weiss lost to him was when the quarterback Roger Staubach was their quarterback. So I mean
44 though. That's great.
yeah.
Okay.
So
If you could pick any team for Notre Dame to beat 44 years in a row, starting today, who would it be?
starting today,
I mean, come on. You beat all 12 of them last year.
right? Oh, that's a fun
So
question.
we can start for a year or two, depending on who it
I
is,
would
but still,
say
44 years.
44 in a row. I would say Wake Forest
Really?
because they're on their schedule a lot. I'm trying to think of a team that they would play a lot.
SoCal.
Oh, who I would wish we could or who we
Yes.
would. Oh,
Could.
yes. Southern Cal, of
Thank you.
course.
Okay.
That's
Make it
that's the easy question. Followed closely or far by Michigan.
I was
number
about to
2.
say, I thought Michigan would be up there.
Michigan. Well, we don't play Michigan every year, but if we
Yeah,
could guarantee,
but if you could choose,
it would be Michigan.
would it play and
It'd actually
beat
be Michigan over Southern Cal. While you hate the,
Thank you for your honesty.
yeah, I hate Michigan. Yeah, I mean, so when you live there, so South Bend's right on the border.
Uh-huh.
It's either Notre Dame fans sprinkled in with Michigan fans,
Mm-hmm.
and they're really obnoxious, especially when I lived there when they won the national title in 99? I don't remember. 98? I forget. When Charles Woodson was there. So Michigan's the worst. They actually, like...
I believe it was 18. I don't know.
Yeah. They won once since
I don't know the old
since
history.
World War II. Michigan thinks likes to say they're the father of college football, and in reality they kind of are, but they also have only won one title since the 40s.
They're
since
the father
40s.
and
Yeah.
the great grandfather. They're up there with Harvard and Yale. It's important history, but it's way ancient history.
It's
you know what
way. I mean, Notre Dame has a lot of ancient history, but Michigan's even more ancient. So, anyway, so we'll get to Michigan, I'm sure. But yeah, so Notre Dame, I think I really like it, but we have to go to Georgia, and I think we're going to lose that game pretty decisively.
Okay.
And I think we have to go to Michigan. That's a house of horrors for us. As much as I hate Michigan, if we could keep the game against Georgia within 2 touchdowns and beat Michigan, and then go 10-2, so lose one more game, that would be a very successful season. I do think though, I do think this is a 10-2 team if we stay healthy, with a loss to Georgia. But if we somehow can beat Michigan, it's 11. I think this could be an 11-1 team.
Really?
I really think they're that good. Having said that, they're not on the level of Clemson and Alabama.
No, but are they returning a lot of starters on defense?
They're returning their pass rush, which was the number 1 in the country last year. Statistically, I would still take
it's
Clemson's
still
defensive line.
important.
But they're returning that, and they're returning their safety. Most of their secondary now, their best corner is gone. They're replacing their entire linebacking core. That's a concern. But the big thing is most of their offense is back. Book is back for a second year. I don't love Book, but he's a very good quarterback.
You're not a book reader? You're not in the book club?
I am in the book club. I'm just not in the book fan club.
You can't even read. Be honest.
Well, I could be part of a club.
Now everybody
Someone
knows.
can read it to me.
You
I can
didn't
listen.
even disagree. It's fine. Find an adult.
Yeah.
Get them to read you about
So
Ian.
can you tell me what's next on the agenda for this podcast? Because I can't read.
One more pseudo and Notre
I can't
Dame
read.
question because
Yeah.
you kind of pay attention to the sport at large, and I think
Yes.
Brandon Wimbush going to UCF to me is a really big deal. Are you going to watch more of them because of him? Are you going to watch more of them anyway because you like the sport? I love UCF. I love the entire American Conference.
I actually kind of, I have to admit, UCF, when I get to watch them, they're a very fun team to watch. This might be mean. I don't think he'll be the quarterback by week 6. Unless they really want him to run like a completely running offense, or like a run offense, like a zone read.
That would be sad. This is his last shot, right?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Is it not?
yeah, no, it is his last
not a
shot.
senior?
He graduated from Notre Dame and it was a graduate transfer. I mean, when you say shot, I mean, it's his last chance to play. I don't know what else he could do after that. I mean, maybe unless the XFL is successful and he could be a wide receiver there. I'm not trying to be mean.
No, I understand.
Yeah,
he's the
he's not.
AAC is a passing league, and to rely on his arm seems like it's asking a bit too much.
Yeah,
I'd love to see it, but
honestly, he should be at he should have been at Georgia Tech running the triple option. He would have been a Heisman candidate.
He always thought he had an arm. I mean, where did he go and spend all last summer in Southern California doing quarterback stuff? He had already graduated. He wasn't studying anything but how to throw better.
Yeah, he was a top. Yeah, well, I think you get to the point when I don't know if you can learn to throw better. I you know what I mean?
He didn't.
Yeah, well, that's weird. What's weird about him
But
was
to go to UCF now? That's what's weird.
I think it might have been one of the few places that would have taken him. I mean, I think that's
Maybe.
I don't
know much about it. I guess that's why.
I mean, so put it in perspective. Notre Dame team that, of course, did not compete against Clemson, but that was Clemson. But a Notre Dame team that went into Stanford or beat Michigan last year decisively, easiest game. That was the same team with Brandon Wimbush that almost lost to Ball State. That's why he was benched, because we almost lost to Ball State. And as soon as Book comes in, we beat Wake by like 40 points. And it was like, okay, the team around and the defense is good enough. We just can't have a liability out there. And then Book ended up being a pleasant surprise. I think he'll be much better. I think he will be the best quarterback Kelly's ever had, which in some ways can be an indictment about the quarterback play at Notre Dame the last 11 years. But I also think Book is a top 10 quarterback. He's not in the top tier, but he's in that tier 2.5, I think, and that's good enough when you have a good team around him. And
he never had Clausen.
Ouch. Not a good era for Notre Dame.
Mel Kiper still got a job though.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that. Mel Kiper said Jimmy Clausen was going to be a pro, and I was like,
no. Didn't he promise he would go number 1, or Mel Kiper would quit?
Or he would
like
promise that he'd be successful, that he would quit. But the thing was, I remember thinking, I was like, I watched Jimmy Clausen for 50 games. There was not a pro there. And he had the best weapons you could ask. Michael Floyd, Golden Tate, Kyle
I'm not
Rudolph.
hating on Mel Kiper, by the way.
No,
Anybody
Mel
who can
Kiper's-
spend time at that specific
Well, he invented
job
the
in
industry,
this
right?
industry-
Yeah.
Well, sort of, yeah.
Yeah,
Nobody else really does what he does. And he's done it for, 4 decades now? You got to give him props for sticking around, right?
Yeah.
For not screwing up.
And he's still got that great hairdo. I mean, it's slick.
Yeah, you could buy it. Did you know that? You could just go to the store, buy it, and put it on like a hat. It
I
fits
should go
like
as
that. It doesn't
Mel
grow
Kiper.
out of your head that
I
way.
should go as Mel Kiper for.
Mel Kiper.
This is a guy. He's got long range. He's got a high motor. Yeah. I love it. I love them there. The coaches said he's a coach's son. All the platitudes.
Cincinnati's trending down. Looks like the Ravens are going to give him a call.
Right. Yes. And he's great. So anyway, that's enough about it.
So
Enough
can you
about
have fun
Davey.
this year knowing that Notre Dame is probably not going to make the playoff?
Actually, this is a very this is a very good feeling. The program's the best it's been. Recruiting, the coaching.
I'm really happy to see you like this.
Yeah.
Because last year Notre Dame went to the playoff undefeated, but when the season started, you were down on him. You weren't happy at all.
No, I was down. I was up on the team. I was down on the quarterback situation.
Okay. It's
And
a big part.
Yeah, it's kind of a big part. But then we
Remember this time last year we didn't know if Tua or Jalen was going to start for Alabama. It's weird what happens.
It's
before
weird.
Week 1
It's
that we
weird
take
that
for granted.
happens. Well, and I think what you've noticed too the last couple of years, the coaching has been at least I've been so happy with the coaching, and will be the first person. I was very critical on Brian Kelly for a couple of years. I actually wanted him to lose his
he
job.
deserved that criticism.
He
I'll
deserved
argue.
it.
I think he's changed
Yes.
a lot of his behavior.
He's
in a way
changed his
that
behavior. He's
these
changed his coaches are
These
great.
coaches do a lot to try to change with kids. They don't often need it as bad themselves.
He's turned into the Dabo Sweeney type, a CEO, administrator, recruiter, and he focuses on relationships with kids. And I think he's so much more well liked by the players. They play for him now because he's always was a smart guy. I thought.
He was toxic though.
He was
to his own players.
He was toxic to his own players.
For example, today, Dan Enos at Miami, the quarterbacks coach, basically threw their new I think he's a redshirt freshman actually, but their quarterback under the bus, Williams, and it's. When I say under the bus, I mean he publicly criticized the kid, and it wasn't the worst thing he could have said, but you don't. It seemed like a rookie mistake. It felt like a rookie mistake. I
don't know if Tom Brady
could
play behind that offensive line.
Well, what I was getting at is Brian Kelly did that notoriously. He was terrible for that.
Yep. He was a blunt. He was an old school NFL blunt coach
and
mindset.
At Notre Dame, a Catholic school, swearing on the sidelines,
going
like
nuts.
Crazy.
Yeah,
His face would get so red.
Yeah, so he's really come a long way, and I don't. This idea that I wouldn't. I mean, obviously, anyone would take a few of the top guys out there, but of a realistic coach that Notre Dame can get, he's the best option we have right now. I really do believe that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So
You're happy with him.
Yes, I'm happy with him.
Into the culture.
He's fit in, and he's got a program now. This is a 10-win team that, again, I will forgive injuries. We can all do that. But this is a 10-win team Notre Dame has moving forward to the next several years.
I hate to interrupt, but you glossed over injuries, which Notre Dame has had a deluge of.
Yes, the last 2 years we've been pretty healthy, though. So
I agree.
That was also changing
but
some
the
of the
previous 4.
That was something they changed. They changed the medical staff and strengthened the conditioning. Well, strength and conditioning staff.
I've always wondered about that because it lasted. It seemed like for 4 years.
Yep, they changed it.
I guess Jalen Smith was the last one to go, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, and the next year was the year they changed everything. They had that 4-8 year, and they brought in everything. And Notre Dame looks bigger, faster, stronger, which is sad to say that's what it was like before, but it's exciting to see what they'll be.
Interesting. I'm curious about what the specifics are with what they changed because you're right. It's impossible not to notice now.
No,
and it might sound like we're glossing over the idea that anybody else gets injured too, but Notre Dame really they did have.
They had a
much.
lot. It didn't make sense how much it was happening. That's why
I remember the center going up and just doing a high five after a touchdown, and it came down 6 inches onto his knee, and it exploded. And just hit the ground, and he was done for the season. That's your center.
Yeah, I mean it's stuff like that was happening all the time. And watch, we have the worst injuries this coming year. But there was a noticeable uptake, and the players looked physically fit, and they seemed to have stamina at the end of the game, which they used to didn't have. So
nobody had stamina. Sorry, I couldn't help.
Yeah, you're right.
You're a good friend.
Enunciation is not my strong suit. Blame my dad.
Well, you can't spell slaughter without laughter. So I'm told.
Thank you, Joker.
It's true today as it was when it was written.
Thank you, Joker.
I think Brian Kelly, in a way, is, I don't want to say underrated. I think people just kind of forget about him.
Right. So he was
consistently builds these 9 and 10 win teams.
Right.
That with that schedule, I think is worth at least mentioning. That's a tall.
Yeah, and there's academic restrictions that you have to go with at Notre Dame and admissions and stuff like.
I'll give you that.
And he's done a very, very good job. Hey, look, if he beats Michigan at Michigan this year.
Explosions?
Yeah, I mean, just pay him what he wants at that point. That's how happy people would be with him.
How happy are you with him? Totally?
Very. I don't want to say totally. I want to see better development at the quarterback situation.
Better than Urban Meyer? I heard somebody say the other day Urban Meyer might go coach at Notre Dame, and I'm thinking...
No. He would have 10 years ago, and they would have taken him 10 years ago, not anymore.
I think Urban Meyer's an example, compared to Coach Kelly. Believe it or not, I think Coach Kelly has changed a lot, changed his behavior, grown up, so to speak. And Urban Meyer, all respect to the guy, I think he never really changed in my eyes. He always made it seem like he was changing. He may have changed some of his behavior, but that's it.
Yeah, I think maybe he changed his behavior on the field, like what his visible one. But yeah, it just all the stuff that happened just made me think, like, this is a guy that it's that slime dog type of like what people say, like that's the real seedy part of college football.
I don't think he's the worst guy, but I don't think he knew any better. In a sense that a guy who gets paid $6 million a year from the state,
you're
really
responsible.
should.
Yeah, you're responsible at that point. If you're getting paid that much, you have a lot. And just the whole stuff with the medicine. I remember Jay talking about that last year. The idea that he forgot all the. It just the whole thing just felt bad.
That felt like lawyer speak to me,
right?
In the sense that I can't convict him on it either.
Yes, you're right. But then the fact that he left at the end of the year made me think, okay, this whole thing was kind of planned. It was kind of it just made it feel that way. Glad he's passed everyone, and I actually think Ohio State will be very good because of this. I actually think you will look back at those Ohio State teams. You'll never see a bigger underachiever with the talent they had. You look at the NFL, how much they were putting in the league, and how little he's done in the last 5 years, losing to 31 points to Iowa. Did he do that twice? I don't know.
How bad did they lose to Purdue last year? And granted,
you had
Rondale Moore is amazing, transcendent, but they could not get past that defense either.
No, and they couldn't
Urban
tackle
Meyer was
that guy.
really not handling the stress well. If I remember right, that was the first game back that he came after that 3-game little suspension thing.
Right. Yeah, whatever it was.
And nobody was paying attention to Ryan Day. I feel like that. I don't know, kind of underexposed hire, but I think it was a good hire. They were committed to him. They gave him a 5-year contract right off the bat.
Right. You can tell. Well, the fact
I think he could be a surprise hire.
Yeah, and I think
he might have success right away.
I think he will.
And
Ohio State's one of those schools you're going to get for Ohio. You're going to get every player in Ohio.
They've got dudes. They've got a bunch of dudes.
That's not talent will never be an issue at Ohio State. Look at the NFL the last 20 years.
They lost some dudes. I think a lot of people are down on Justin Fields, which understandably so, but
right. But
the Big Ten is competitive, but kind of right for the picking for Ohio State.
Right. I think it's a bunch of
year.
competitive teams, but no one that stands out amongst them except Ohio State should.
Ohio State often does. It feels like they're one horrible game away from being exceptional, right?
Or they're probably one horrible game away from winning 2 or 3 national championships.
I know we've said this before on the podcast, but don't forever forget that Alabama and Notre Dame played for the national championship in 2012. But if Ohio State wasn't on the 1-year bowl ban, which was their choice which year to take it for the tattoos, which I never really thought was that big of a deal.
Right.
They would have played Notre Dame for the championship instead of Alabama. Make no mistake.
And Ohio State would have won.
They would have won. And that's okay to say, right? But we forget how close they've been so consistently, right? Including Notre Dame, too. I think a lot of people are like, if you're not Alabama or Clemson right now, you're on the outside looking in, and it's like there just aren't that many teams who are close to elite, but there are several for sure.
Right.
Who else do you got in that pool? Like, we can talk about who you think is going to make it to the playoff, but I think all of those teams who are a possibility should be at least on the verge of being elite.
So I would say I want to drop it into tiers. Obviously, let's separate separate Alabama and Clemson.
I didn't mean to.
Yeah,
I know you can read.
Thank you.
It's okay.
Wow. Oh, okay.
I was just teasing.
Wow. I mean, it's constantly.
You can't read.
I know. So you got
let's start there. Do you have Ohio State winning the Big Ten?
Yes.
So do I. Thank you very much. I feel like I'm alone there. Everybody's picking Michigan right now, which isn't a crazy pick.
It's not a crazy pick, and honestly, Michigan is 2 plays away from winning 2 Big Ten titles over Ohio State. I actually think Harbaugh. Now, last year was the first year where I felt like you could really criticize Jim Harbaugh.
Either one works.
Either one. And remember, full transparency. I hate Michigan more than any team in sports not named the Baltimore Ravens. So I hate Michigan that much.
I hate Baltimore.
You
don't have to answer that.
I don't know. I actually like the Orioles.
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
But yes, let's not go down there. But I have to pull myself. So maybe I might be being too objective on Jim Harbaugh. I think he really inherited a horrible program that people didn't really know how bad it was, and he's done a really good job to a point.
It's still Michigan.
It's still Michigan.
Like, to me, you could have said the same thing about Texas.
Right. But the state it was in, and you have to realize, in a conference that Ohio State had dominated for 10 years at that point. I mean, Michigan was bad for about 10 years, with a sprinkled in year here or there, just like Notre Dame, who was bad, but had like 1 or 2 good years.
They had some great dudes, like Funchess.
Yeah, everyone, yeah.
And they would eke out a win every now and
Yeah,
then
they
against
would.
their
Yeah,
top-rated team.
yes,
Sure.
but not Ohio State. Ohio State beat them 13 years in a row.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, so I think that's where I'm doing. But at
That's
this
right. I forgot that was a big reason why they were so high on Harbaugh, and he still hasn't done it.
But honestly, that's what I'm saying. He's had a lot less talent in Ohio State, and he should have won 2 of those games. Having said that, last year I believe he got murdered in that game, right?
It was a slaughter. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So at that point, it's no longer. You can't lose that way. So that's why I said last year was the first year I feel like you could criticize Harbaugh because of that Ohio State game.
I criticize Harbaugh more personally because of his behavior.
Right.
A lot of the stuff that he does feels. I'm not saying every coach is super honest all the time, but he behaves like a car salesman in the bad way, right? In the stereotypical bad guy in the movie trying to do horrible things to your sister. Like, no.
Or almost like the guy in the movie. I feel like he's the guy in the movie that the protagonist quits his job to go fight crime. His boss is that guy. Like, just horrible, like, just constantly everything's about himself.
If he was a cop, he's definitely taking money from the mafia, right?
Right.
That's what I feel like.
Or he's getting you, or he's pulling you over for a part, like going 1 mile an hour over the speed limit constantly. He might even be that guy. Like, he's weird, very eccentric. And I don't
even think he's all that eccentric.
He might not be.
I just think he's kind of egotistical.
Right.
Pathological narcissism just screams from him.
I think the Ohio State.
No
I think
complete disrespect.
Yeah,
that sounds.
I think
pretty
Ohio State's done a great
but...
job with their assistants. I think the thing that people forget about the coordinators have been so bad at Ohio State, and that's on Urban Meyer. They have the right people in there now. They always have talent. I think it's Ohio State's to lose. I think they'll. I don't care. I don't think it matters where they play. I think they're going to kill Michigan again. I mean, maybe not like last year, but I just don't think it's going to be competitive.
It's at Michigan.
I don't know if that matters. They killed them 2 years ago in Michigan or whatever it was.
A lot of people are putting Michigan all the way in like the top 5 right now in preseason. Am I crazy to think that that's illegitimate?
I don't think you're crazy to think that's illegitimate. They're in the Oregon tier. And let me explain this. Michigan.
Interesting.
Oregon is the team.
I like Oregon, by the way.
I do.
Careful.
I like Oregon. But what was Oregon under Chip Kelly and all those other coaches for like a 10-year period?
They were a video game. It was crazy.
They were a video game, but did they ever actually get it done?
They came close.
They came close.
Got a Heisman.
Michigan's come close too. Yeah, they did get a Heisman, Mariota.
It was well deserved. I love Marcus Mariota.
Yes, yeah, I agree. And he deserved it. And that was their best team. But they also got drubbed against Ohio State, and that's not Mariota's fault.
Yeah, against an incredible Ohio State. I think that was the most definitive.
Virginia Tech was
so far.
Yes,
the first year.
Virginia Tech was also this team for a long time. Always very good, but always just not enough.
Yeah, I honestly don't feel like I've ever seen them be elite in my lifetime, no matter what era.
They had Michael Vick, the Michael Vick year, but they lost to Florida State. But that was during the heyday of Florida State. But that's my point. Always almost there.
Right on the edge. Yeah.
Right on the edge. Couple plays. Every year you can say there's a couple. If this would have happened, we could have done it. But it always happens. So that becomes who you are.
How about now? Who they are now. Bud Foster's gone. They replace a ton of dudes. I think Virginia Tech is one of the very last in terms of returners this year.
But Foster left. That's right.
And they're going to play at Boston College. To me, Boston College always just plays with passion at home, right? That's a lunch pail defense kind of team. They've got more returning starters than they had last year. And it's a tough place to play. In terms of starting the season, I don't think it's one of the tougher places to play, even in the ACC.
Right. Well, because Boston College...
I think a lot of people are picking Virginia Tech based on that name is what I'm getting at.
Right. Well,
I'm picking BC in that one.
Boston College is another one of those teams that if you play on the wrong night, you're going to have a long night. You know what I mean? Like, if you show up with your A game, you're going to be...
Write that down, the wrong night into a long night.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, what I think is if you show up with your A game, you're going to beat Boston College.
Okay.
But if you show up with your B-, C+ game, they're going to show up and they're going to kill you. If it's
they didn't show
game.
up last year against Notre Dame at home, right? You went to that game. It was fun.
Boston College?
No, Virginia Tech.
Oh, right, Virginia Tech. Right, yes, exactly. I think. Well, they also, I believe, they had some quarterback injuries, but Notre Dame is a lot better than those two teams.
Excuses have no place on this podcast,
True.
sir. No.
True. Yeah, we killed Virginia Tech. I was actually at that game, and it was a cool environment. Enter Sandman was crazy, but then you kind of just realize, okay, Notre Dame's better. It took them, a couple quarters to kind of figure it out, but the depth wore out. And I think Virginia Tech, I think Fuentes is a good coach. I think it's a hard place to recruit. Blacksburg's in the middle of nowhere. It's a tough place to get a lot of elite players. Whereas you would feel like Virginia Tech's name brand, the sum is not as good as the brand or as the brand name, because we got so used to Virginia Tech for so long. The talent's not there like it used to be.
It hasn't been. And you remember Mac Brown at Texas as he kind of faded? I felt like we were watching that before with Beamer.
Yeah.
And everybody's excited about Mac Brown too. I'm among them. I'm hopeful, I guess. I have no ill will towards him.
I think he can. I don't have any ill will towards him either. Obviously, I think if he can go on there and recruit, then he'll do a good job. The expectations aren't very high at North Carolina. I think he can exceed. I think he can meet those expectations, which is like, I think at best is an 8-win team, win a game on the road here and there.
8 wins this year?
Oh, no. I'm saying what he can get to that program to.
So let's start at the top, okay?
All right.
Are you doing any pick'ems this year?
I was
Let me
planning
finish
on
that sentence for you. Yes, Gray. I'm doing the IonGreenville.net college football pick'em challenge, right?
Yes, I am
because
doing
they're
that.
doing that again. It's running through CBS Sports, if I remember right. I did it today. It worked great. You're picking against the spread, which is my bread and butter, baby.
That's what I like.
That's where I make money.
I like going against the spread.
Well, there you go. You're gonna
Pick
have
Clemson
it. A lot of people
multiple
don't
times
like that.
recently. Yeah.
So go to IonGreenville.net. It's free. I think they're giving away. I know they're giving away prizes. I love Ion Greenville for everything you need to know what's going on.
When I get
around.
those prizes, I'll just bring them to the podcast.
Well, I think it's going on at the end of the year or a few times a year instead of every week, because that was just insane. I don't know why they did that, but good on you, Chris Bizzell. CB, keeping it real. I'm hoping a lot of people aren't aware. This is totally selfish, but if you don't vote in time if you don't make your picks in time at IonGreenville.net, you lose out on all the points for that week. And so the more you do that, the better my chances are. So do the right thing, folks. IonGreenville.net. Make it work. So with that said, who do you got? Boston College hosting Virginia Tech.
We're picking lines, right?
Let's just talk straight up.
Straight up?
Because I think the line is 3.5. If you want to look it up, that's fine.
Let's look that up.
I don't have it right here.
Week 1. Yeah, actually, never mind. This is
Virginia Tech's got the line anyway, and I'm picking Boston College. I think it's 3.5 to Virginia Tech.
I would take, if it's 3.5, I would take Boston College, but I think Virginia Tech will win probably like 24-21, something like that, or 20-17.
All right, starting off with a great start for my pick'ems.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, just listen and I don't want to say you'll get rich with my picks, but you might, and so just give me a cut when you after you listen to this podcast and make a lot of money. Just think about me.
Sure, I won't let you know if I make a bunch of money. I am, by the way. I'm making a ton of money off of this. I'm rich.
Can you
I don't have to pay you a dime. You didn't sign nothing. Go on. All right, back to Mac Brown, North Carolina, playing. I was gonna say hosting, but they're in Charlotte, playing South Carolina. The Fighting Gamecocks.
Yikes!
Let's just start with your pick.
Oh, the pick easily South Carolina. The spread's 10. I would take South Carolina.
Me too.
I think it's. This is not.
I could be wrong.
I'm not picking against Mac Brown here. I'm picking against what North Carolina it has, and it's the first game. I think they'll play hard for him. It might be very close for a half, but South Carolina has way too much talent. I actually like the South Carolina team. I think Will Muschamp's actually done a very good job there, which I am stunned to say.
I'm not.
Well, I think maybe you can learn, but the fact that they kind of imposed at South Carolina, it's like, this is what our offense is going to be. And
but they didn't do that last year, by the way. I hate to interrupt, but they kept saying how fast they were going to be. I don't pay a lot of attention to the preseason stuff, but they made it so deliberately hopeful.
I think the lack of depth on defense has maybe forced them to slow it down.
They have a ton of injuries.
And I think moving forward, it's going to be a lot better team. I actually like South Carolina. I think their schedule's always going to be tough. If they go 7-5, 8-4, that doesn't mean they're a bad team. I just think they play better teams than they are. But I think this is going to be a very good South Carolina team.
Just want to mark the tape.
I think this
for
is
when a Notre Dame homer and a Clemson graduate says, "I like the University of South Carolina."
Yeah, objectivity is necessary for
job.
this, and so maybe I'm too objective, but I think South Carolina.
I don't dislike North Carolina.
No,
But they're getting buried.
they're gonna lose this game. I think.
I don't think it's good.
I would.
I don't think it's close.
I'll go 34-13, 21-point game.
Yeah, I think it's week 1 is always weird.
Right.
Well, let's talk about the game that we saw in week 0 here in a minute, but I
Yeah.
think people take for granted how hard it is to do anything with any event. Every college football game is an event. It's a logistics nightmare. The fact that we don't have more problems is crazy, but week 0 affected everybody.
And don't freak out if your team struggles week 1. Don't freak out.
And if the other team scores 77 points, don't go crazy either.
Right. Yeah. So I think everything. Right. Exactly.
You do have a lot of low-scoring, clock-running games in week 1,
Everyone
too.
should
People
kind of
just
keep
trying
their
to get
mouths
conditioned.
shut for the first week and a half, maybe 2 weeks.
No, you can count me out. I'm going to talk, bro.
You can talk, but don't be a homer with your team yet. Talk junk to other things.
That's
but
impossible for some people.
That
no
is
matter
very.
where they
I'm
are.
just saying it's. I used to be that way, and I have been burned too many times. So this it shows growth to just do that. Now, when your team rolls out and wins the first 3 games, 77-0 each game, then you can start yapping your trap. Just everyone cool their jets week 1. I mean, Alabama's playing Duke, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to be a beatdown.
I hope so.
It will be. But
You have to
Alabama,
forgive me.
yeah,
I'm a little tender right now because they announced a few hours ago Dylan Moses is out for the
That's-
year with a torn ACL. He's the only other. I was gonna say, let's just put it this way: the backup is a true freshman.
right, and he's the
Everybody else
quarterback
at the
of
position
defense.
got hurt.
It's a
That's
huge deal.
the signal caller, the play caller, if you will, the
humongous
brains of the
deal.
defense. It's the identifying character.
It will
on
not
every Nick
affect
Saban
him from
team.
a lot of games on that schedule, but if it's a close game against, let's say, Texas A&M or LSU, you want someone that's a steady hand back there.
You want Dylan Moses, and it's
Right.
tragic. It just plain sucks, especially the last practice before you actually play a game. Yeah, I'm with you
Right.
on Duke, and I mean no disrespect, but I have not even looked at what they do. I think on one hand, Nick Saban respects coaches a lot in the sense that he deliberately doesn't like running up the score and sometimes will hold his coordinators back. I don't know that's going to happen in this game in particular because now you're going to have to rely on you're going to pass the ball more.
Right, but you also don't have Daniel Jones at Duke anymore. If you had that, I think you could see a competitive game for about a quarter and a half. But Alabama just always shows they respect every opponent. That is the greatest strength of Alabama is they respect every team they play, which is impressive because that's why they beat the bad teams on their schedule so decisively each time. They always show up for every game because of that. And obviously with the loss to Clemson last year, Alabama's going to score every possession they have with Tua. I would be very in the first half.
That's the asterisk, though, isn't it? With Tua, and I don't mean to get ahead of myself.
True, but let's just say he stays healthy for the Duke game. I would not be shocked if
Duke,
if Alabama had 42 points at halftime, and that's everything there. Eventually, it comes to a point where Duke is a well-coached team. Well, they're playing another really well-coached team that has NFL caliber players at every position.
I like David Cutcliffe.
I do too. Yeah. I actually think if Tennessee would have hired him as a head coach 8 years ago, like they might have, it would have turned out a lot differently. But you know what? He's got a great job. No expectations. He does a good job at Duke. It's a private school. He's coaching really smart kids. I mean, it's probably very rewarding for him. And also, he's a really good coach.
He is a good coach. I think he's a good leader for young men, too. And he's been doing that for a long time. What's the spread in this game?
Last time I checked, I believed it was 35. Let me
That's
see.
what I thought, too. It seems high.
And
it doesn't seem that it's unattainable, but I'm conflicted here, Davey, because like I said, Nick Saban especially with the older coaches, he has so much respect for them that he deliberately holds back and just puts the ball on the ground to run clock.
34 and a half. Yes, but you know what? We said that. I remember having this conversation with you last year, and then when Tua showed up, they threw the ball 21 straight times to start the season almost. Nick Saban has evolved. That's the best way. The reason why Alabama has continued their success because programs go up and down. And they top off, and they hit a plateau, and then they start declining because they get stuck in ways. He's changed everything multiple times. Tua, because the way they would just throw in with the wide receivers, people were looking around the country. Besides Clemson, it's Clemson and Alabama is the best wide receiving corps, and then maybe throw in Ohio State for just wide receiving corps. Mm-hmm. And when you have such a strength like that, Alabama was wasting it for many years. Well, starting last year, you saw when you get the ball in the hands of these playmakers and hit them in stride, you can see what they can do with it. Alabama will. You know what? Lock this up. Alabama will kill the spread. I think they'll beat the spread by 3. They might beat this. This might be a 56-0 game.
It's interesting.
And I wouldn't say that about most Duke teams, but Alabama has a lot to prove. You cannot run a whole season, I believe, on a revenge factor. I don't think you can do that. Maybe you can. Eventually, you're going to have to make plays. But for week 1, it's going to come out.
For what it's worth, they're not calling it that.
Right.
I think the media is just going to run with it, and everybody.
But I do think
I'm not saying that doesn't exist in some of those players either.
For instance, yes, maybe
but now
it's
you're going to have to literally
thing.
say, "Careful, Tor," because you're losing. They lost a bunch of guys in the offseason outright, and Dylan Moses was not just the icing.
That's a really
on the
big
cake,
loss.
That was the cake.
That's a really big loss. It's not losing a wide receiver when you're Alabama when you have literally 6 great wide receivers. You can afford to lose one, even though you don't want to. You can afford it. Injuries always happen.
Wide receiver is also a position where you can excel as a true freshman.
Right.
Natural ability and instinct play more important roles than size, than conditioning, than really even understanding
honestly,
the playbook.
the thing that people don't realize is how fast the game is for true freshmen.
And that's why it's
linebacker,
so important.
it moves faster than probably any other position besides quarterback and maybe safety.
And that's why everybody else needs that guy out there directing them.
Right.
Now you don't have that.
Yes, and
Alabama, it's a team that's been defined by guys like Dante Hightower, Rolando McClain.
Yes, the guy that played
Reggie Ragland.
The guy that was on Baltimore Ravens for many years.
C.J. Mosley?
C.J. Mosley is another example.
Right.
Yeah. So you don't have that. People underestimate that. Even if Dylan Moses, and I think he's a very good player, his importance to being out there is almost more important to how good he is, if that makes sense. He's very good, but he's so much more important as a leader and a quarterback of a defense. That's what they're going to miss the most. Yeah, you can replace talent.
Especially in loud conditions.
You can't. Yes, exactly. Now, luckily for Alabama, their schedule is front-loaded in a softer way. I think that gives them time to get better. Still, if it's a close game, where do they play A&M this year?
I'm sorry?
Where does Alabama play A&M this year?
It's at A&M.
So that's the thing. So A&M, I think they'll win that game decisively if Tua's healthy.
Okay.
But that's a huge but. Now, let's say he's banged up and they have a couple bad turnovers. You need a guy that can snuff out a screenplay on a broken play. You need to be able to see a guy that can read something. Well, the true freshman is really just trying to be at the right spot at the right time. He's thinking out there. He's not reacting. So that's the first game where you're like, okay, this could really hurt Alabama. And who knows what other injuries they sustain in the process. So what happens if you lose a couple guys up front and he's no longer protected by a good defensive line? That's another thing you have to. So this is this is a chip already like a sculptor chip. This is chipping off a big part of Alabama.
This is the Tua of the defense.
Right.
I understand that a lot of people they're not aware of how much they don't understand defense and how important not just that position is, but the leadership of that position and experience.
Right. Sometimes it's the safety that is the quarterback of the defense, and you can't lose him. This was the leader and quarterback of the defense. Whether it's particularly a linebacker or a safety, it was him. You can't lose that. You can't lose that 3 days before the season starts and replace that. Doesn't matter what you have. Even Alabama can't replace that. Now, they have.
They often can, but not this year.
Not this year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they often can come pretty close,
right.
but not this time. No, not at all.
So
I don't know how much that's necessarily going to affect any of my picks. Like for example, Duke. I'm still not sure how to pick that one.
I think the offense will overwhelm Duke, and I don't. Yeah.
I think that makes sense. I don't know. I think I got to just think about it more. My point was going to be that I haven't seen enough of Alabama yet because of Dylan Moses explicitly that I don't know how to judge him yet. You know, never mind Tua's health. I think the league itself, the schedule, that seems to be a trigger word lately too, is schedule, right? But you do play against more dudes with the opportunity to get hurt more often.
Right.
They're going to be out
You're
for
playing a
blood
more
because you are
physical
also
schedule
Alabama.
than a lot of
You're
places.
the superstar. We saw it last year. I don't think you see that in necessarily just about any other league. Rivalry games may be a little different, but that's usually at the end of the season. I do think he's fragile enough, we've seen, that I'm not sure that I should expect him to make it through the rest of the season. If he has a backup as good as him that we don't know about, it would be Mac Jones, and I think that would be a surprise too.
Yeah, exactly.
But losing him and Moses, it's not out of the question, which makes Alabama to me a bit more of a question mark than I think people are okay with believing.
Yes,
Saying they should go undefeated, it's such a tall order.
Alabama was not, this dynasty of Alabama was not built on great quarterback play. It was good leaders. I'm not saying they were not good players, but there's 5 better quarterbacks than A.J. McCarron every year.
You had quarterbacks who were game managers,
right?
But they were elite level game managers.
Correct.
Yeah,
and they made good plays when they were called to make good plays.
Good 12-yard plays.
Yes, or the play action to Amari Cooper.
Jake Coker had an arm.
Yes, he did. Actually, Coker was one of the first guys you felt like if he could have been developed more over time at Alabama, because he was at Florida State.
Well, you got to remember he grew up. He always wanted to go to Alabama.
Right.
He didn't get a scholarship. Went to Florida State, got beat out by Jameis Winston, who also grew up wanting to always go to Alabama. He didn't get an offer. Nick Saban met with him and said, no. And thank God he did, because he definitely would. He had the talent to do it. You can't just get rid of a guy. The way Florida State handled him was terrible, and that's all I'm going to say about it. But Jake Coker came back to Alabama as a walk-on, basically, and he was not the lead guy. He became the lead guy, won a championship on his last year of eligibility, on the backs of guys like Kenyon Drake and Cyrus Jones, but still it was not because he was the most elite level quarterback ever. Except at that time, to date, I would say he had the strongest arm I've seen for an Alabama quarterback since maybe Jay Barker.
Yeah, long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah, so I think but this is different. That's credit to Nick Saban. He's realizing, and Clemson has shown this. Great quarterback play can just deconstruct a defense. It doesn't matter how good the defense is. At college, it can. I think he's evolved with that. This is one of the reasons why Alabama's continued to have success. I think because of that, they are more reliant on Tua. This is Alabama, and I don't want to say this, but Alabama will, if Tua gets hurt early, they might lose 3 games this year.
And if they do, that's the wheels coming off for Alabama, right?
Right.
All the speculation.
Whereas
and
before, if you would have lost A.J. McCarron, the wheels wouldn't have come off. You wouldn't have won a title. I'm not saying you would have won a title with some of those teams, but the wheels wouldn't have come off.
I think Georgia, that game alone,
that
is huge.
Well, they might not get. They might not get that. Yeah, they might not get to that game if he's hurt, and that's why I think they're vulnerable.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
They're vulnerable with Tua, which is probably something we should get to. With Tua, they're one in my opinion 2, but 1 and 2. They're part of that top tier. I guess we should probably talk about who we got
in your what?
In our playoffs.
Well, in your playoffs?
Playoffs.
Okay.
Playoffs.
I thought you were going to say Heisman because of Tua. I honestly think it's Trevor Lawrence's to lose. I think if Tua gets hurt, then there's no shot. And I also think if they lose to Georgia, then there's absolutely no shot.
Yeah, but the picks come in a lot of times before the postseason, so I don't know if that will play a huge difference. I think it's Tua's to lose, statistically,
because he's a junior. This is the last year kind of thing.
Yeah, they kind of do that sometimes. I would say.
Let me ask you this: Trevor Lawrence. I mean, no disrespect to the schedule, except that you have to have Heisman moments, and I think Clemson is so elite. I'm not sure how many Heisman moments he gets unless they deliberately put him in some, which isn't a bad idea.
Which is not a bad idea.
It just hasn't been something that they do characteristically like a guy like James Franklin or Urban Meyer.
Problem with Clemson's schedule for the Heisman, A&M's week 2.
Yeah.
There's not a team on their schedule that you would think Florida State would be, but we know what's going on there.
We don't know. I mean, they could surprise us, I guess. But you're right. Go on, because that's it. So that's an opportunity.
There's not a game on the schedule where you're like, until at South Carolina. Now that's a game. He could have his Heisman moment, and that's week 12 or whatever it is. That's the game 12. I guess that's week 14 this year. So yeah, that could happen. So I definitely don't want to say I'm not trying to overlook South Carolina. I'm not sorry, South Carolina fans. A lot of people
would still argue his Heisman moment happened in January against Alabama.
Right, but
that might not be illegitimate.
Tua had the Heisman wrapped up until the ankle happened last year. It was. I mean, there was not a guy that dominated the Heisman till week 10 like anyone I've ever seen, until besides Tua last year. If that makes sense. Like, he was so far and away the number one, the Heisman pick until he started getting hurt. And then he really fell off towards the end.
There were a lot of people who straight up didn't even vote for him. 0 points.
Yeah.
But that happens to Alabama.
That's
anyway.
also just, it happens. There's a lot of people voting for that probably shouldn't be, but
there's a lot of Oklahoma voters too, right?
Right, and that's conflict of interest.
I have no problem with Kyler Murray winning it. In fact, I'm happy for him.
I think he deserved it at the end. I thought he earned that, but
I think Oklahoma deserves a 3rd Heisman winner in a row in Jalen Hurts.
Oh well, I think
I would love to see him eat the Big 12 alive.
So yes, we should. We should. Let's go around and talk about Oklahoma. Yeah, that's another team.
I'm kind of picking Jalen Hurts to win the Heisman.
I'm okay with that. So
I got Trevor Lawrence second, Tua third, just because of other mitigating factors. But I think he would be the most deserving.
So for story's sake, for the sake of the story, the Hurts winning the Heisman with Tua there, that would be. And they are good friends. I think that would just be a really interesting and
it would be a good story, period.
Right.
Honestly, any of those 3 guys would be a great story, because of what they've done.
There's probably not a guy that coaches quarterbacks better than Lincoln Riley. Wow, like Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, and I just think in that defense, in that league, that, let's be real, it struggles to play defense, but also there's also very good quarterback play. So it's the whole chicken before the egg. When you have really good quarterback play, you're going to have bad defense. And when you have bad defense, and you're going to have bad quarterback play. So here's the problem.
Not bad defense. One of the worst defenses in the league. Nowhere to go but up.
Right.
And people are picking Texas because they were so bad last year? No.
I'm
all in on Oklahoma.
Well,
I
think that I am very all in on Oklahoma to win the Big 12. The reason why is the last major problem of Oklahoma is gone. That's Mike Stoops. As Clemson fans know, the greatest day at Clemson, besides them hiring Dabo Swinney and hiring him on, was when they brought Brent Venables in. And why did they bring Brent Venables back? Because Mike Stoops got fired at Arizona. Bob Stoops brought his brother back, which makes sense. Nepotism at its worst, or finest, whatever you could say. But Mike Stoops had a very good reputation, but the game passed him by, and he didn't adapt. And Brent Venables left, came to Clemson, changed Clemson into a decent defense that had players but would underachieve, to number 1 in the country with NFL players on the defensive line that you don't see a team have, let alone Clemson, when you think about it. And Mike Stoops got fired last year or left. So I think now, because of that, you're going to have good coaching at Oklahoma. They were really lacking any form of defense. You have Jalen Hurts. He is such a great matchup for the Big 12. Big 12 goes small because they have to, because everyone goes shotgun 4 wide.
Yeah, I honestly think he's underrated as a passer too.
I think he showed very much improvement. He showed a lot of improvement last year.
He sure is tough.
He's a tough guy. He's huge. He's going to be bigger than the linebackers in the Big 12 and of course the safeties. I think he's going to run wild. I think he's going to have I think they're going to have an easy breeze to 12-0, unless he gets hurt. And I would say Texas might be able to get him a second time, maybe in the second game, because I do like this Texas team, even though Tom Herman, but Tom Herman, I think is.
I like Texas. I like Sam Ellinger a lot.
Right, I do, and they have the guys up
I don't like
front. I don't like Tom Herman either, but I think because of the talent that Texas has, and especially up front, they beat. If I remember correctly, they beat Texas. Texas beat them in the Red River Shootout last year, but then lost to them in the Big 12 championship game. And I think Oklahoma. It might be reversed this year. I think Oklahoma.
Yep. Most likely a rematch again.
Will be a rematch,
and then
be a rematch. I do think. I actually think either one of those teams is capable of getting to the playoff, but I really like Oklahoma.
I do too.
I think they're gonna be a very good team.
So you got Oklahoma winning the Big 12. You got
do.
Ohio State winning the Big 10.
Clemson winning the ACC, of course.
Say no more.
Pac-12.
You still have Alabama winning the SEC? I'm trying to figure out your playoff teams without you actually saying it.
Right. So I do.
Okay. That's why I
have Alabama winning, but there has to be a preface. If Tua is healthy, Alabama might be the best team in the country this year. But he showed he's fragile, and even if he's playing, it might not always be 100%. So if you have an 85%, if I can guarantee at least an 85% Tua, they're going to beat Georgia and Atlanta. But they might not. And
Georgia wants blood.
Sure.
And they're going to pull out tricks. We'll cross that bridge if and when we get there. But
you're right. I think Alabama is still. I think they're better coached. I think their offense is just such a matchup nightmare for anyone when Tua is healthy. It's such a matchup nightmare for anyone in college. The hardest position to play in college football is quarterback. But people will tell you, like coaches will tell you, players will tell you, the second hardest position in football is the cornerback position. And it takes the most time for a corner to get good at that position. It's not about speed. It's about reading something and figuring out where he's going. It takes about 2 years in the NFL for some of these guys to finally really know how to play the position. So because of that, wide receivers are just so much better than cornerbacks in the NFL and college. And that's why you're seeing 40-point games now. And I think because of that, Alabama just will overwhelm people with that offense this year until, of course, they get to Clemson. Then it's the same thing on the other side of the ball.
Okay.
Or on the other side of the field.
So you got Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Oklahoma.
Those would be it's kind of like chalk, like it's penciling in like teams that you would expect. I think Ohio State, I would actually take Ohio State and Oklahoma, and Clemson's a shoo-in for me. Unless Lawrence gets hurt. I still actually think besides A&M, they can go undefeated without Lawrence if he misses a few games. I really do think that's how much better they are as a program.
I agree, including Chase Bryce.
Right, and I think that's a good thing.
Backup quarterback.
I think that's a good thing. Where does Alabama plays LSU at home this year, correct?
Yep, where they lose more games than on the road.
Sure.
I think LSU is the toughest team, is why.
So this is something I wanted to get into. Here's my Oregon tier, the team that always is hyped but never gets it done. That's become LSU the last few years.
Yeah, but do you know what they did this offseason?
Yes, they hired a new quarterback whisperer.
Yeah, Joe Brady. No, my point is they're trying to deliberately shorten the game, right?
They're trying to. What LSU had a few years ago, well, I would say 8 years ago with Les Miles.
Clemson just destroyed Alabama. The worst loss in Nick Saban's career point spread wise. And they had, I don't think it's a coincidence, the shortest amount of time holding onto the ball, shortest amount of time getting rid of the ball after the snap, right? In the country. I think even in the pros, right? It was incredible.
It was
like
insane
2.7
last year.
seconds.
Yeah.
I think anytime any team has beaten Alabama, you've seen a lot of teams, particularly in the SEC, try to adapt that specific identifier for that team, right? And especially on offense.
Right, and that is the correct move for LSU to do that.
And Gus Malzahn, Like, I think in a sense that instantly makes it more competitive because that's everybody's sort of weakness, but in particular, Alabama's been susceptible to that. Joe Burrow isn't that great quarterback.
Correct.
But
That's
putting
that's,
him in that kind of a weapon system definitely makes them more competitive.
It makes him more competitive, but again, what it's shown though, you need, in order to beat Nick Saban in that defense, you need to have great quarterback play. Burrow, I think he's a nice quarterback. You don't have that yet.
I think he can be that. Now with the combination of losing Dylan Moses, it's LSU is a real concern. That's also after a bye week. I think that's the biggest concern. They're also obviously, I shouldn't assume everybody knows they're in the same division as Alabama in the SEC West, so that competes for the SEC title game.
Mm-hmm.
Could end up being LSU outright.
All right, so I'm
not picking them.
This is my disagreement with you.
Go ahead.
When was the last time LSU beat Alabama?
I'm trying to think. Let me get my syllabus out. It's been a while. 7 years ago? 8 years ago?
I don't know because it's so long ago. It's at least 7 or 8 years. The
Okay.
last time they won was the 2011 game in Tuscaloosa.
Mm-hmm.
So they lost the title that year, I believe 21-0.
Yep.
Okay. And then they lost every regular season game since then. A lot of them have been competitive. Might I add, though, the ones that have been competitive since then have been in Death Valley. The ones in Tuscaloosa have been beatdowns. I think we're going to see that again this year. I am not on the LSU train or bandwagon. I think they're heading the right direction, but this is a brand. This isn't conspiracy. I don't want to think that, but but LSU built up a brand of just crazy athletes everywhere. They don't have that anymore, even though they still have some here and there, but from top to bottom, they don't have that.
Yeah, they do.
I
gotta disagree. They got some serious dudes.
They got some good dudes, but they're not what they were under Les Miles. Now they're moving that direction. In a couple more years, and if they get a competent offense, then we'll talk. But LSU is still in that Oregon tier of teams of my going against tiers of teams that are close, but they don't get it done. And they used to, but this is not Les Miles LSU during his heyday. This is a team that really faltered the last few years under Les Miles, had talent issues, and Orgeron, from all accounts, is doing the right things. I think they're just maybe 1 or 2 more years away from really competing against Alabama.
Okay. Interesting. I think LSU might be the surprise team for a lot of people this year. Like, especially after seeing what Florida didn't do against Miami.
Week 0, though.
Yeah,
it's week 0.
There's a lot of talk where it's kind of hard to dispute saying, they're not one of the 8 best teams in the country. I'm like, yeah,
but who else is? Right? We don't know right now. And again, everyone, it's week 0.
And you're also talking about, like, number 8, which I think that's a hot number for a lot of people because the playoff implications, if we expand, people think it's going to go to 8.
Oh, it will go to 8.
Sure, that makes sense. I think the 8, though, is going to include conference championships deliberately in some form of how that works.
And that requires my team, Notre Dame, to possibly eventually join a conference. But at the same time, they might not. So who knows?
With that said, Clemson, we're recording this on a Wednesday. Clemson, by the time we air this, it'll be Thursday. They opened the very first ACC Network game against Georgia Tech at home on a Thursday night, also hosting College Game Day. One of my favorite guys, Kirk Herbstreit, who we have very different opinions about. We don't have to talk about Kirk.
We don't have to talk about Kirk.
I love you, Herbie. Give me a call.
Yeah,
Go Bucks.
okay. Yeah.
OH. With that said, how do you feel about Clemson hosting? Stop it. How do you feel about them hosting Georgia Tech? The Yellow Jackets don't return a lot of dudes.
They don't return a lot of dudes.
Right there spells certain doom.
And it's a new system. And when we say new systems, like, new systems happen all the time, but they still use the same verbiage.
Not the Georgia Tech.
Not the Georgia Tech change. This is triple option. And honestly, this
was triple option. Excuse me.
And you recruit different offensive linemen. They're smaller. They're more athletic. You recruit different players. The biggest thing I think...
Well, wait a second. I hate to interrupt again, but the argument there is that it's Tech. It's a difficult school. It's math nerds and stuff.
It's math nerds,
much
but
like
this is
Notre
also
Dame.
a team that won titles in the 90s.
But that's why you're not getting 5-star dudes necessarily.
Well,
too,
I think
right?
I think it's that, but I also think it's a team that these players didn't want to go. I don't think they wanted to go up against a triple option in practice.
I think it became that.
Yeah,
right? I think they
yeah.
so identified
So
that, and they never tried to get past it.
I think Paul Johnson's a very, very good coach, but he wasn't able to get players in there, and that's half the job. That's why his best years, besides I believe, was it Justin Fields year, and the only reason why they beat Clemson that year is because Deshaun Watson tore his ACL in that game, so that's another thing. But their heyday was the first couple years when they won the ACC, and the biggest thing about that was he had a lot of good players all over because the coach before him, and I'm blanking out his name, they had good players. They weren't coached well. So if Paul Johnson could somehow trick everyone to thinking that it's not the triple option, but then they learn to play the triple option, they had the talent, he would be very successful. I just think in this day and age you can't recruit that. Having said that, when you recruit to a specific thing, it's going to be a 3-year period of horror for Georgia Tech.
Horror.
I think it's going to be horror, but this was the right move because Georgia Tech won a title in our lifetime. And this is a storied program.
Yeah.
Historically. I know a lot of it's older, but it's historically. You are in Atlanta. Now, you are never going to be the top dog in your state, top dog in your state.
Ooh.
I actually didn't even mean to do that. But, it happened. You're never going to be the top dog in your state, but you can be successful in Atlanta because there's a lot of good players in that area. And so maybe you're not getting the cream of the crop. You're still getting a lot of the good crop. You could be a successful program winning 9 games each year at Georgia Tech. It's not going to be for a couple
I was going to say,
years.
I'm curious. I'm hopeful for the Yellow Jackets, but not much
I would
more than
not
that.
be hopeful for the Yellow Jackets. I would not put your hope in them. Put your hope in another team.
Listen, I'm hopeful that I won't get to watch the triple option anymore. I don't love the triple option.
I
just
used to
don't love
like
it.
the triple option, but here's the problem. Notre Dame plays against Navy every year, and we always lose guys to it because of the cut blocking. And look, I get it. It's football. It's a real way to play football. College football was established via the triple option, so it's part of the game. I just think now when you see it, nothing is more worse watching a kid get his knee cut up by a cut block.
Before we had forward passes. Yeah.
And
cut blocks.
Yeah, and I just
Terrible.
Yeah, and you're not going to be able to get players to come play that. Elite players to come play that.
So you say you're picking Clemson.
It's a 30. I am actually shocked by this spread. I thought it would be a lot higher. It's only 36.5.
Yeah, and I don't know that necessarily that's a bad number. I do think Clemson is going to
Maybe it's
be
because it's week
prepared.
1. Maybe that's all it is.
I think this is an outlier for them versus a team like Alabama, who we spoke about before, is that they're still also going to be preparing to be at their best for Texas A&M, right?
That's a good point. So there's that factor, and it's week 1.
Yeah.
Having said that, I would put this kind of on the lock it up that Clemson covers that spread.
Me too.
That's
why I mean it.
I think it could be 56-0. I've said that score twice.
I think Chase
maybe
Price
59.
going out there
Yeah.
in the second quarter can also score several touchdowns.
And again, I don't have any hatred towards against Georgia Tech.
They're returning
any team,
so few dudes.
They're returning so few dudes, and when you recruit to a specific system and no longer you have that system, something so unique, it's growing pains. And I mean, talk about the worst game you could have if you're Georgia Tech. Your first game of the season, new coach, you're not doing the triple option anymore.
Well, you go in expecting a loss, so maybe you can. I don't know.
But you
I
don't want to. But
Yeah, that's a
if
good
you lose
question, I guess.
34-3, you're happy. If you're not going to lose 34-3.
They're gonna score.
They will. If they score, it'll be against the second and third stringers. They will not score against Clemson starters.
So are they gonna score?
No.
0.
I'm going to say 0. I wouldn't lock that one up.
I think those Clemson guys are hungry enough to might be able to make it happen.
Well,
experience is a problem.
I will say though, this is a good rivalry game. These current Clemson players don't remember it as such because this has not been a competitive game for about 5 years. So Georgia Tech just wants to survive. That's why when you feel like you just want to survive and get to week 2, that's when it can get really bad. I think the thing that can not happen where it does. So if it's 36.5 and there's a 68.5 over under, Vegas is saying basically 48 to 13, something like that. I mean, I'm not doing my math.
They're saying Georgia Tech's going to score several touchdowns, or Clemson.
2. They're going to say they're going to score 13 points. So I'm going to stick with my 0.
Okay. I'm with you. I like it. It's
Yeah.
my favorite number. Did you know that?
8 is mine because I want
8?
8 in the playoffs.
Gotcha. Okay. I love a good 0.
I do like a
love
good 0.
defensive stuff.
Nothing is more fun than shutting a team out. I will take 100. I will take a shutout any day over a 100-point game.
Let's go on to some other games this weekend. Because one of the sleepers I got is Ole Miss versus the Memphis Tigers, who play in a conference nobody watches, but a lot of people have an opinion on.
But it's actually a very competitive conference that wins a lot of games.
Terrific, including
Yeah.
Memphis. Not everybody in that conference is, but I mean between Houston and South Florida and Central Florida.
Central Florida, South. Yeah,
Like Cincinnati is a team a lot of people are overlooking, but
Cincinnati's generally
they're
a
hosting UCLA.
7,
That's
8,
another good
9 win
matchup
team.
week
Yeah,
one.
it's another good matchup.
I think
UCLA.
they're hosting. Anyway,
Yes, because I believe I forget.
I'm
Yeah.
picking Cincinnati anyway, and nobody will talk about it because everybody will probably say it's UCLA. Who cares? But
Well, I mean, I don't know. People might not.
I'm going with Cincinnati.
So right now I got
Tickle.
Cincinnati is a 2.5-point favorite. It is hosted by the Bearcats.
Go Bearcats!
Go Bearcats! I actually like that number.
Go get them.
I think Cincinnati. It's just one of those games when you're a West Coast team and you travel east to a small school, small football stadium and everything.
It's tiny.
There's a
I went to
weird
school there.
vibe there. It just messes with guys. And
There's a better
UCLA
vibe
is
there
not.
now.
And
They get
UCLA
fans
is
there.
not a good program right now. This smells like a loss, but I think Vegas obviously shows that because they're a 2.5-point favorite. So
Smells like a win for my Bearcats.
for your Bearcats, that's right.
All right.
Go Bearcats.
And Ole Miss versus Memphis, the Memphis Tigers. Who you got there?
Ole Miss is interesting. I really like Ole Miss's talent at the top. The problem with Ole Miss is these
Do?
sanctions.
At what position?
I like their wide receivers.
They've got some receivers still, yeah.
I think they're going to have they're going to score. But I think the problem is the depth of that team with all their academic restrictions. I'm going to go Ole Miss in this game. I think, again, I'm a firm believer in wide receivers are just so much better than defensive backs, as I talked about last. I think that's just too much for a team like Memphis. They're not going to be able to exploit, I don't think, some of the holes that Ole Miss has up front. I'll go with Ole Miss in this game. Where's this game at?
I don't care. I'm going with Memphis anyway.
Oh. Please elaborate.
They were a feisty, underrated, underexposed team last year. I say feisty in the sense that they had some fundamentally great offense, scored a lot of points, super competitive in their league. I can't remember what their bowl game was last year. If I remember right, it was a narrow loss. It was real close. When I see guys like that who play when they're committed, when you can tell that they are all in with their team, no matter what, no matter where they are, no matter what's going on. Plus they're returning a bunch of dudes against Ole Miss, who lost a bunch of dudes, still hasn't been able to recruit, and the tempo that Memphis plays with, which is pretty extreme. It's not uncommon in that league, but certainly less common even now at Ole Miss, for sure.
Ole Miss is a 5.5-point dog.
Is that right?
Right.
Did something happen? Because they were not a dog before.
Yeah, they're a dog. And so and this game is at Memphis.
Good.
So that does make me think a few things. But I will still go with, I believe, the offense, the wide receivers at Ole Miss will be too much for Memphis.
You're just an SEC homer.
Okay. Yes.
Conspiracy is real.
Yes. Okay. That I've never been called that before. But
You're part of the problem, David.
part of the solution, I think.
Just for the record, this is the only Power 5 team on Memphis's schedule. That sort of happens often in the American Athletic Conference. So
That is correct.
for whatever it's worth, that would probably change by the end of the year, but at least at this point.
Can I do a shout out for a game easily my favorite game of the weekend?
No. On second thought, yeah, I thought you'd never ask.
Give me FAU
Go on.
at Ohio State. This is
Fighting Lane Kiffins?
The Fighting Lane Kiffins versus. See, as much as I'm glad Urban Meyer is gone,
We all are, I think.
I think we all are. The opportunity that was there to have Urban Meyer on one sideline and Lane Kiffin on another sideline would have been very fun. Having said that, we're all happy it didn't happen.
I think I
Having
would have
said
used
all
a
this,
different F word, but go on.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Florida Atlantic University. Maybe that's an FAU. How about that?
Just take the A out, and you got it.
Now you're talking Furman. Go Dens!
So this is interesting. This is actually an interesting line. It's a noon game, which Ohio State's good at that. This line started around 21 into 22 and a half, and then the money just poured on Ohio State. It's moved it up to 27 and a half.
Okay.
Ryan Day's first game. I did pick Ohio State, obviously. I think Justin Fields is going to be a little bit of a project. I think Ohio State schedule lines up well for them early. I think their first real challenge will be when they have Nebraska, when they head to Nebraska. I know they got your Bearcats in week 2. I think Ohio State will struggle in this game. I would take FAU on the line. Obviously, Ohio State will win the game by 20 points. I'm not remotely saying that. And I don't think you're going to be able to take away anything from Ohio State. I think what you're going to see...
Interesting.
Ohio State will not be a finished product week 1 because of Fields. If Haskins was back this year and they only won by 20 points, we got problems.
If Haskins in, they're throwing the ball more.
Right.
I think Fields is going to deliberately keep the ball.
They're
going to
keep the ball in the fields. They're going to try to protect him. He's got a good four games before they play on the road at Nebraska, the Scott Frost, Nebraska.
Frosty.
The Frosties.
The sleeper of the Big Ten.
Yes, I think they're going to be a good team. Not ready, but they're going to be a sneaky good team this year.
Excellent quarterback who was injured most of last year.
Right.
People forgot about.
I think the Fighting Lynn Kiffins are going to go into Columbus and come out with a cover.
Ooh.
And he's going to have a good time in Boca when he gets back.
Okay. I like it.
I think that's an interesting... I think Fields is going to be a very good college quarterback. I just don't think it'll happen until week 2 or 3. If Ohio State had to play Michigan week 2, I think they'd be in trouble. They don't.
Okay.
And so I think Fields by the end of the year will be a very good quarterback, and there's enough talent there. But
who does Michigan have this weekend, by the way?
Michigan.
While you look that up, I'm going to bring up the fact that we have already seen football. You know, week 1 usually starts with Hawaii and Rice and Prairie View and all these other teams that I can't convince anybody to watch. And Hawaii played and beat Arizona this weekend, but nobody watched. Instead, more people watched the atrocity of the University of Florida Gators against the Miami Hurricanes.
I watched it.
We all did. More people watched that game,
Hawaii game
than any game since, I think, November last year, they said.
Oh, I thought it was November 2016.
In any case, everybody was
Everyone watched it. It was the worst game, but it was
I don't expect
so
anybody
great.
to watch to me, what week 0 is teams that nobody cares about anyway, which includes Hawaii, who I thought had a great
It's always
fun
Rice
game.
in someone, right?
Sure, and I get why I can't convince people to watch those, right? But my point is, usually you don't have the rest of the nation watching the very first football game of the season. That's exactly what this is. I think people usually take that for granted too. And it was not what we wanted. It was week 0 from top to bottom. The game day crew, they were swearing on live air. They couldn't get things right. Maria's looking for David Pollock, and he's nowhere to be found. That's just on game day. They got the cameras wrong. They're on the wrong guys. They're misspelling names.
Dan Mullen had a very bad game, which I hadn't
even gotten to the coaches and players yet, let alone the refs, who are just out there doing laundry, right? It was a nightmare from top to bottom. I'm surprised the grass didn't just die underneath their feet, just because everything else was.
Like Batman style.
I'm glad it's over. I mean, no disrespect to those two teams, but there were so many mistakes from top to bottom. It's hard to pull too much away from either team, other than the fact that they are almost certainly not going to be competing for their respective conferences.
I am going to go reverse field a little bit on Florida on this.
Florida's going to win the SEC?
No.
Go on.
No. I do not say that. And they will not win their division. They will not win the division. Georgia will win that division.
Yes,
but
I'm with you.
Florida has a real good pass rush.
There you go.
I think they showed that. I think Florida had critical penalties, critical turnovers, things that happened. Like Florida was about ready to go up 14-0 early in the game, and they fumbled at their own 6 or Miami 6. If they punch that,
we don't have to go over this whole game,
right? I'm saying,
panic attacks.
Yeah, but it was so horribly coached. It was so horribly announced. It was so horribly reffed. The crew had a rough game. They were panning to different plays. Desmond Howard swore on TV. It was a joke, but honestly, it was so much fun. And generally, if that happened week 8, I think I would have turned it off. But since it was week 0, I felt like I was just like I had to get my popcorn out and watch the train wreck happen.
I could not stop laughing.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
The first time you see an Adam Sandler movie or something, I was just cackling. I was so happy with laughter, not just like laughing at the mistakes. I don't like that stuff too, but it got so bizarre.
It got
and
so
nonstop.
weird.
I kept saying this game will never end, and I hope.
If you're Florida, you're just happy you won that game. I think Florida has some good players.
I think you need a new verb for that, right?
You survived that game.
That's pretty close, I guess.
But it was
you inherited a win, right?
Oh,
there was
yeah.
nothing that you did. Maybe I don't know. We're being harsh on them, but I think they earned some criticism. And
yeah, they definitely earned criticism.
What nobody earned.
I also
was
saw
being
week
criticized by the
0.
coaches.
You have less practice time. It's just honestly, it's a game that probably should not happen week 1 or week 0.
There was a handoff.
But obviously, the money of that
side.
ESPN made on that game is they're going to have that game again, something like that again. You have to because people tuned in and watched it, and I think everyone
It was ABC, wasn't it?
Well, it's ABC and ESPN
Sure.
around. Yeah,
I'm just saying.
But I mean, that's my point. It was such a heavily watched game. They're going to have a game like that again. But if you're looking for good football, it's never going to happen in week 0. It's never going to happen week 0.
You can't say never, but I never expect it to be this bad.
Well, you should not expect what we saw.
Yeah. Ever.
But I don't think you're ever going to find a crisp game like on a week 4 or 5, or maybe even week 2. Like for jitters, a lot of young players. They don't have a preseason, so that's what we got, and that's why I'm a believer. You play a weak team early on, week 1, and then you get into the big games week 2. That's my strategy. I like, but
a lot of programs. I say a lot. A handful of programs don't do that anymore.
Right, and I think we benefited from that because it was funny, and I enjoyed it. And I laughed, and I sat. It was one of those moments you're like, I'm glad this isn't my team. But then you think about, well, what if my team played on week 0 against a competent team like Miami might be competent?
Who else you got this weekend? Who you got? Oregon and Auburn. Gus Malzahn's going to be calling the plays.
This is a tough one. I actually
the original
think
high school football coach.
The original high school football coach. I really like Mario Cristobal. I love the Oregon quarterback.
Justin Herbert.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I am
Do you
going
love the duck? I love the duck.
I love the duck.
He's the best mascot.
One of the best ESPN commercials ever had the duck in it. He's such a good mascot.
He's hilarious.
And we know, as you know, Gray being an Alabama fan, this might hurt to watch. I think Auburn is going to win this game. But
I think people overemphasize the rivalry between Alabama and Auburn. You
got a name on Iron Bowl.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know, but it's
a great rivalry. I just don't have that same level of hate. It's Tennessee.
I know.
I just can't wait to get out of the SEC.
Right, exactly. So I think Auburn. I think Auburn has enough up front. I think they have enough. I think they have better players, but I will still take the coaching of Oregon better. I think they're gonna. Oregon is ushering into a new era of dominance. Is going to be ushering into a new era of dominance in the Pac-12 starting next year. Because Cristobal is such a good recruiter. He's really getting the talent in there.
He's making them tough.
He's making them Oregon tough. They're not there yet, and I think what's going to happen is, SEC homer coming out. I think the depth of Auburn and the size of Auburn will wear them out in the fourth quarter. I think it's a very close game. Last time I checked, it was a 2.5 point spread towards Auburn. I'm kind of with Vegas on here. I wouldn't pick this game. If Oregon wins this game, I wouldn't be shocked at all. I like
Oregon enough that I actually want them to win, but that's got less to do with Auburn than anything else.
Right.
But I do think Auburn's going to embarrass them. I think with Gus Malzahn calling the plays, that it becomes a dance, and they can. They're ready to dance in week 1. That's the nature of that program, right? And you're not. It's all about tempo.
Oregon, yeah.
So they come out strong, get up a few scores, and Oregon can't catch up because Auburn's defense is going to be pretty nasty.
I think they'll win the game because of that. I think Mario Cristobal has made them so tough that I think Auburn will have issues moving the ball at times. But I think what will happen, they'll wear them out. I think it's
one of the fastest dudes I've ever seen.
Right, I think Oregon's so well coached. They got some good dudes on their team too. They're very tough. They have a great. Let's not underestimate potential pro at quarterback.
He's going to go pro, but I hate to say it, I don't think we have any choice but to underestimate him because he's proven it so much. I think asking him to prove it against Auburn in week 1 is asking too much. I don't think it's going to tell us how good he's going to be this year or not. I just don't think it's going to tell us. I'm hopeful this becomes a competitive football game. I really am. But in all sincerity, I think Auburn takes a lead early and just holds on to it. All right, who else you got?
So this week, it's kind of a slower week.
Georgia Vanderbilt. There's your SEC teams for you.
Well, let's
homer.
definitely pick that one against the spread. Yes. So I actually am. This is a conversation. I'm actually cool on Georgia this year. When I say cool, they're still, I think, the third best team in the country.
I agree. Yeah. I don't know why it's so hard to explain that to many people, but I don't try that hard either. All I see is good fundamentals, strong recruits, solid depth. One of the best kickers in the country.
Right.
Jake Fromm is
great. Probably the best offense.
there.
Probably the best offensive line in the country.
Arguably, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like to use the word best, but yeah.
One of the best.
Certainly arguable. Yeah.
Yeah. A top offensive line.
Yeah.
This is an interesting spread. It's 22. This is at Vanderbilt, a night game.
It's a night game?
It's a night. Yeah, it's a 7 o'clock kickoff. 7:30
I didn't know they
kickoff
had lights
on
there,
the SEC
in all
network.
Sincerity. Okay.
Yeah. So Vanderbilt, this is bad. I'm blanking out on their coach's name. But the guy, he's the defensive coordinator from Stanford. Derek Mason. By the way, podcast people, I'm bad with names. So
you love the SEC. I'm going to stop saying that.
No,
it's not funny anymore.
It's not. It wasn't really funny the first time.
I disagree. It was very funny.
I humored you.
Our listeners are going to have to rewind the podcast.
Right.
They're still laughing. It's fine though. That's the beauty of podcasting.
That's right. You can rewind. Yes. So I think because of that, I think Georgia. I feel Jake Fromm's a little overrated. I think he benefits from a lot of players around him. I think he benefits from a lot of really good wide receivers that are no longer there. I still like this Georgia team a lot.
I think he might be overrated as a passer. Might be though.
Yeah,
I don't think he's an
going to
elite
have
level quarterback. But
I don't think he's an elite
so
level
good at what he does.
quarterback, but he doesn't have the wide receivers around him. But he does have the running game and Swift and that offensive line.
Okay.
You have a good secondary. I like the defense.
So are you taking them over Vandy?
Not in that spread. It's 22-point spread. I think this is one of those 27-6 games. Vanderbilt just struggles scoring the ball. Derek Mason gets him up, plays so tough
I'm going to write this down.
defensively.
You said 27-6?
I'm going to go 27-6.
Okay. Now I'm going to remind you that Georgia just got embarrassed by Texas. I know it wasn't the worst loss, but the way people never stopped talking about it, it's embarrassing. That's a team who's angry. There's a pretty stacked defense. Now they're up for blood in league play to open week 1.
Right.
I don't think anybody's better prepared to cover that spread.
True. Having said that, remember week 1, shenanigans on the road against a good team. Vanderbilt's a good, competent, tough team, they're a well-coached team. If this happened week 5, I would take Georgia in the spread.
I'm with you. I hear what you're saying.
So I just think
especially after week 1 last year.
Yeah, it's week 1. I just don't like beatdowns. I like beatdowns with. That's why I pick FAU over Ohio State on the spread, not because Ohio State's not that good of a team. It's just the way the matchup and when it happens. I just don't like it. I think Georgia will go undefeated this year.
Okay.
To the SEC championship game. I don't see anyone on their schedule where I would be terrified. They always play a tough schedule, and they are playing Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
They actually have a very tough schedule this year, George.
Week 4? Is that right?
I think it's week 4 or 5. Well, it might be week 5, but it's the 5th game, I think.
Okay.
Well, we're pulling up Georgia's schedule here.
We don't have to waste time on that.
Oh no, week 4. It's the 4th game of the season, Notre Dame.
I'm not worried about it.
But I think Georgia will be undefeated this year. I do. I like them, but I think we might be overstating Georgia to be in that top tier, if that makes sense.
We might. We'll see.
But we'll see.
I think they win the SEC East. I'm sorry. I think they win the SEC this year. Because I don't I think the SEC title game between Alabama and Georgia is 50-50. It's been that close that consistently. I think talent level is about that close. Tua is a bit of an outlier, but he is the outlier for Alabama. I think his injury it makes it 49-51, you know, in the sense that Georgia has a slight edge. So you got to pick something. Oh, you're picking against Alabama. Man,
yeah, you're picking against Alabama.
It would certainly
enjoy
not
it,
surprise
Gray.
me. I'm loving it. Oh, don't get me wrong. I'm loving it. But Tua has to survive. He is the outlier.
If Tua survives, I think it's a pretty easier win for
here in
for Alabama.
August, I think it's fair to say 51% to Georgia. Don't feel sorry for me.
I don't.
Okay, good.
I'm saying it's right now in August. It's a 60% for Alabama.
Then why are you crying?
I feel bad for you.
A single tear for Dylan Moses.
Dylan Moses tear.
How about a tear for Georgia Tech? How about a tear for the Pac-12 not making the playoff again?
No, they won't make the
probably
playoff
not.
until Cristobal, I think, for another 3-4 years.
I'm going to Atlanta this weekend to watch the Duke and the Alabama game, right?
Oh.
And so I'm going to be watching
in the
other games in Atlanta.
Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that. How are you spending this weekend? You going to be up all night Saturday?
I will be up all night Saturday.
Good.
Sadly, Notre Dame plays on Monday, which is kind of fun, but I would rather play on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
But because of that, I'm having some friends over my house. You're not invited.
Thanks.
I mean, it's convenient that you're going to Duke in Alabama, but I wasn't going to invite you if you weren't going.
I don't have a furry costume anyway, so.
That was told in confidence. Anyway, so I'm just going to be watching, and I think I'm going to be watching the game. I'll be looking at the most. I'm looking forward to FAU Ohio State because
interesting.
That I'm all about that line, and I think Lane Kiffin going up to Ohio State is just fun. I think it's fun. Lane Kiffin, former USC coach.
Went to Oklahoma last year, didn't work out well at all.
Yes, but that was Kyler Murray.
We didn't know about him though.
Yeah, well, now we knew about him right away.
Yep.
Actually, we knew about him because remember he was signed by a baseball team.
That was all we knew. You're right. Good point. Yeah,
we knew he was good.
Athlete,
he was a professional athlete.
Sports. Yeah,
yes, he could buy dinner for all of his teammates with that money.
What an awful guy.
Awful guy.
Terrible.
And having said that, that's the outlier of that. I think they're going to be a little bit better this year. I want to see that game. The game, I think, now that I know that you think Oregon's going to get killed, that's the game I'm looking at because I see that as a toss-up game. I really do. I think Herbert is such a problem for these college defenses. I think Cristobal might be the new guy. What I mean by the up-and-coming star, you know him from Alabama. I think he's terrific.
We know a lot of coaches from Alabama. That's not necessarily a good thing anymore, right?
That's not a good thing, but it's working with him. He's brought the right mentality at Oregon.
I like Coach
You're at
Cristobal
Phil Knight. You have a lot of resources. It's a potential if you have the right guy. It's a potential for a dominant team in a conference that is really kind of teetering on disaster because Stanford seemed to fall off, and then you have USC. So I really like Oregon moving forward in that conference. I think this is a chance for them to do it, to make a statement that we're here. I think they'll fall short, but I think they're going to have a good showing. So other than that, yeah, just watching football, drinking with friends.
It sounds great to me.
Yeah.
Let's get out of here. Anything else you want to leave us with before we start week 1? College football season for 2019?
Everyone, it's week 1. Don't freak out or talk too much trash. Okay.
Too late.
Notre Dame's going to win the national championship.
There we go. Yeah, go Irish. All right, buddy. I'm with you on that. All right. Roll Tide. Go Tigers. Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you. Thanks
Cheers.
for having me.
All right. See ya.
Not red, not blue, not white, not green, just gray. Just gray.